Welcome to the Wiltfong Whip Around, a new Monday and Thursday show here on the On3 Recruits channel. Now, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to host it. Steve's going to be dropping all the intel, and you guys, you'll be plugged in. This is going to be great, but before we get going, make sure you're locked in. Hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. Okay, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong and start this first Wiltfong Whip Around. All right, we're going to start with the biggest developments of the week, well, the weekend, because today is Monday. Five-star offensive tackle, the number one offensive tackle in America, David Sanders, was in Knoxville over the weekend. What's the latest intel coming out of that visit?
Well, David's been visiting Tennessee since 8th grade, so it's a campus he's very familiar with, has really clicked with Glenn Ellerbe, the offensive line coach. And Josh Heupel and this coaching staff made David and his family feel very comfortable while in Knoxville. There was a recruiting event at Coach Heupel's home that they attended and had a great time at. And they're looking forward to getting back to Tennessee this weekend for the Vol spring game. So a lot of Tennessee, a lot of orange for David Sanders and his family this month. And then after that, the official visits begin, Josh. South Carolina is going to get the first official visit for their spring game in 2 weekends here in April. And then everything else is in the summer. Clemson is the first weekend in June. Georgia's the second weekend in June. Tennessee's the third weekend in June. Alabama's June 18th. It's in the middle of the week. Ohio State, the last official visit, the weekend of June 21st. I think when you talk to as many people as possible about this recruitment, people certainly point to Clemson being a program that's always been at the top. Georgia, a program that's always been at the top. A recent visit to Ohio State definitely moved the needle for the Buckeyes in this recruitment. In Tennessee, again, he's been visiting the Vols as long as he's been visiting any program. Another big visit coming up this next weekend, and we'll have a great idea of where Tennessee stands going into the official visits.
Yeah, this recruitment really heating up as the summer gets closer. Moving on, another major development. The Ducks had a big weekend, and you put in a new pick on the recruiting prediction machine in favor of Oregon. It goes to wide receiver Cooper Perry. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, a dynamic receiver, number one player in the state of Arizona, was in Eugene this past weekend. I think Oregon is the one to beat. He's also considering Arizona State, Oklahoma, and Washington, but wouldn't be surprised if this is a recruitment that winds down sooner rather than later. And Cooper told me the opportunity of playing at Oregon is something special. Coach Lanning, Coach Junior Adams are two coaches he knows that will help develop him. He's super excited about what that staff and what that offense under Will Stein brings to the table. He thinks it would be a great fit for him. Oregon, the leader in that one, coming out of another visit to Eugene.
Yeah, I know Oregon is a highly valued prospect on Oregon's board is Cooper Perry. Let's move on to On300 running back Alvin Henderson. Now, he's from Elba, Alabama. Auburn trending at 87%, Bama at 4%. So the state of Alabama owns about 91% of his RPM here, but he was at Penn State over the weekend. Did they make a dent in his recruitment?
Well, there's been times where it's looked like Alvin Henderson was close to committing to Auburn. Maybe he still will be a Tiger. But when you talk to people around Alvin, they say, watch out for Miami and watch out for Penn State. And Alvin said this weekend visit to Penn State was big. It opened up his eyes, getting a chance to be around James Franklin. One of his best relationships is with co-offensive coordinator, running backs coach Jaywan Sider. He likes the development piece at Penn State, what they do with their running backs, how they're utilized, and he felt like family in Happy Valley. So while it looked like Auburn was close to sewing this one up, Miami definitely near the top, if not at the top, and here comes Penn State charging as well. So be interesting to see what happens. Florida State, another contender for Alvin Henderson as well.
Yeah, so we'll see. Penn State now has a foot in the door in this recruitment. We'll see if they can finish. Let's stick with Auburn. I want to actually talk some Auburn big visit weekend recruiting. And if we're going to talk Auburn recruiting right now, you know we're starting with quarterback Houston Longstreet, who's out of California, and he was on the plains for a visit this weekend. Steve, how important was this visit for Longstreet to Auburn?
Well, with him going to announce his college decision this coming Sunday, this was maybe his last visit of the process before he announces his college plans. And his dad said it's up in the air. You know, he's going to need yesterday and today. They hope to have it ironed out by tonight, what he's going to do. But Texas A&M was considered the leader going into this past week, and A&M had him on campus last weekend. Then he went to Ole Miss. Then he went to Oregon, and he rounded out by coming back to Auburn for a second time this spring for the spring game. His first visit, he loved the way Auburn practiced, loved the tempo, loved the way the guys were getting after it. This is a place where the family thinks it's prime for a quarterback like him to come in. They have everything else. They recruited an outstanding receiver class last cycle, 2 straight legit championship caliber type recruiting classes under Hugh Freeze and company here now. And Husan Longstreet just getting around the fans, getting around the coaching staff again, felt very comfortable. And one where it looked like A&M was pulling away, Auburn has pulled right back into it, and it would not be surprising to see him end up on the Plains as well. And one thing I want to add, Josh, is he's an Under Armour athlete. He was in a Super Bowl commercial with Tom Brady, the Under Armour Next athlete. Auburn's connection with Under Armour, that's another nice wrinkle in this recruitment. But quarterback development is the number one reason for what he's making his college decision on. It's coming down to Auburn and A&M. Colin Klein, A&M's offense, being around that football team, Coach Mike Elko, he's felt very comfortable there. But Auburn getting this last visit is definitely, at the very least, made things interesting as we head into the final week of Husan Longstreet's recruitment.
Yeah, I want to talk about 3 other big-name visitors that were out on the Plains this week. And we'll start with wide receiver C.J. Wiley. He's out of Milton, Georgia, number 260 overall, but he's a big-time priority for Auburn. How do they sit with C.J. Wiley?
Well, he's higher in the On3 rankings, and he's sky high in the SEC, ACC rankings. This is as priority a pass catcher as there is in the 2025 recruiting cycle after helping Milton win a state championship as a junior. Georgia has been considered the one to beat, but they got a lot of competition. Auburn certainly in there. This was an official visit for him. Spent time with Perry Thompson and the staff. They loved the Auburn offense. Auburn's real attractive. He was recently at Florida State. Several programs in the mix here, but Auburn, one of them on the short list for C.J. Wiley right now.
All right, now moving on to an elite defensive lineman, actually the number 3 ranked defensive lineman in the country, Nate Marshall. And coming out of this one, now he's from Illinois, but coming out of this visit, he said that Auburn was definitely top 5. Who do you think the biggest competition is for Nate Marshall with Auburn now involved?
Well, I think Auburn's even higher than top 5. Miami is certainly a program that I look at as Auburn's major competition. He's going to be at Miami's spring game next, but this was an opportunity for him to get back down to Auburn and get around Coach Vontrell Williams-King, Hugh Freeze, and the staff. Said it was a great feel. He said this atmosphere at the spring game rivaled his game experience on the Plains in the fall, and he said the scene was crazy. So just the amount of love and support that the football program gets made for a great experience, but just the commitment to their student athletes. He talked about what they pour into them off the field as well as on the field makes Auburn an exciting place for him, and he certainly feels like he's one of their top overall players on the board. He feels the same about Miami. Illinois is in there. This young man's mom was an All-American basketball player at DePaul. She's in DePaul's Hall of Fame. His grandfather played basketball at Illinois. They're looking at the Illini. A recent really strong visit to Alabama for Nathaniel Marshall with the new staff, so Alabama rising there. But Auburn and Miami, they've been mainstays in this recruitment, and the Hurricanes are next up with their spring game.
All right. Last prospect I want to hit on in terms of Auburn is safety Eric Winters, and he's from Enterprise, Alabama. Top 100 overall prospects. So we're talking elite of the elite right here with Winters. Auburn trending near 90% on his recruiting prediction machine. Are they close to closing this recruitment out with Eric Winters?
Well, he says he's got a few favorites. I like where Auburn stands in that group. Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, some of the other schools that he's visited and looking strongly at. But he said the spring game is crazy like always. He believes Coach Freeze and the program are trending the right way. He's talked about how he's seen Auburn win at the highest level and to be part of the group that helps them get back to where they belong. He thinks that would be pretty special. I think Auburn is in pole position for Eric Winters right now. They got to hold off Georgia, Tennessee, and Miami.
All right. Really effective recruiting weekend. Auburn Live does a great job of covering all things recruiting and football for the Tigers. Go check that out. But a huge weekend for Auburn recruiting. All right. Let's move on. Let's go out west, actually, and we're going to talk a little USC Trojans. They are staying hot on the recruiting trail. It all started a couple of weeks ago when Lincoln Riley just seemingly flipped the switch to recruiting when he flipped five-star Justice Terry. Now they're up to 10 commitments. Justice Terry was their second commitment in that class to go along with Julian Lewis. Now they're up to 10. So USC, they're cooking right now. They landed 2 more commits on Sunday. That was Dwayne Morris from Chattanooga and running back Harry Dalton from Dinwiddie, Virginia. Now, they are now also trending for a wide receiver. Steve, you put a pick in. Tell me about Romeo Eisen out of Baltimore.
Yeah, USC, they have the number 3 recruiting class in the country, and Eisen is a 6-foot, 175-pound two-way playmaker on the prep level with 10.8 speed in the 100-meter dash, runs 21.9 in the 200. And when you turn on the film, you see that speed. He's running by guys. He tracks the football well. He works the middle of the field, and he's a threat to score whenever the ball touches his hands. USC covets him. He was on campus this weekend. I'm hearing the Trojans are the one to beat. And when you look at the other 2 guys that they got committed in Morris and Dalton, and then Eisen, these guys do a lot of things on Friday nights. Morris plays quarterback, wildcat quarterback, running back, receiver. Dalton plays quarterback on the prep level. 2 years ago, he threw for over 2,000 yards, rushed for almost 2,000 yards. These guys are just fantastic football players. And if USC can add Eisen to Morris and Dalton, you just think about the playmaking possibilities and the versatility that they bring to offensive genius Lincoln Riley's offense. And you got to be pretty excited about that if you're Julian Lewis and the USC coaching staff.
Absolutely. Now, there was a couple other priority targets on campus that USC is not necessarily trending for, but they are actively recruiting. Let's start with defensive lineman Trajan Odom out of North Carolina. What was his visit like this weekend, and what are you hearing?
Well, Lincoln Riley knows that if USC is going to win at the expectation and standard that this program has, they have to continue loading up on defense. Coach DeAnton Lynn, the new defensive coordinator, is making a fast impression with all their top targets on the trail. Trajan Odom, one of them. Defensive line coach Eric Henderson. He's as hot a name as there is in the country in recruiting circles right now because of his NFL background, but then Josh applying the relationship building skills with his pedigree. Sometimes you can be a great football coach, but you're not that engaging. You're not that charismatic. Well, Coach Henderson's putting in the extra miles on the trail, and it's paying off with guys already committed. And now with Trajan Odom, who's a West Coast native, who's in North Carolina. He said he had a great visit, loves Coach Henderson and what they're doing with the defensive line, what Coach Lynn has planned for the defense. Said having the opportunity coached by one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. That's how he's viewing Coach Henderson for what he did with the Rams, coaching guys like Aaron Donald. They're in a good spot as they battle Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, some of the other heavyweights in the country.
Yeah, speaking of heavyweight recruitments, linebacker Riley Pettijohn out of McKinney, Texas, he's been taking visits. He's been going to see some schools, and this weekend he was in L.A., he was at USC. Would you consider the Trojans now a major player for Pettijohn?
Well, they certainly were coming into the visit and talking to people that spent time with them coming out of the visit. USC is definitely in the middle of this one, but they're battling some of the best. Texas A&M, Ohio State, Florida State, some of the other schools that Riley Pettijohn's high on. He just recently ran a 10.7 100-meter dash too. So he is a freaky second-level defender that is around the football. He would be a massive pickup for the Trojans again as they retool this defense and try and put 5 stars, top 100 recruits out there as they transition into the Big Ten.
Yeah, absolutely. And USC staying hot, like we said, trending for more. Big visit weekend over the weekend. We'll talk more USC as the week goes on. Now I want to talk some 2026 QB dominoes. I know on the Inside Scoop yesterday we talked QB dominoes for the 25 class, but hey, the 26 class is also coming off the board. So let's start with Noah Grubbs, in-state. He's a Florida in-state prospect trending to the Florida Gators. Do you consider UF the favorite early in this Noah Grubbs recruitment?
I have them on the short list. I do not consider them the favorite. Talking to Noah and talking to people around him,
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame is certainly one of the programs that he's got a keen eye on. Ohio State recently offered. He was on a visit. Now, I think he would have to come back to camp. Ohio State, Chip Kelly, the pedigree at that position under Ryan Day and company. I think they want to see some of these top guys throw one more time. But Ohio State's made a big impression. Michigan's always been a front runner. He was just at Miami. The Hurricanes, I think, are probably in that top three right now. Spent the weekend at Alabama. But if you're asking me who I think leads for Noah Grubbs right now,
Mm-hmm.
I would maybe say the Irish,
Okay.
which is interesting because Notre Dame also leads for Brady Hart right now, Josh. And he's out of Cocoa, Florida, won a state championship there as a sophomore. Now, I say Notre Dame leads, just talk to him. He talked about the culture of the program, type of guys on the team, and being in an environment where you can compete for a national championship year in and year out. Those things he felt at Notre Dame. Gino Guidalgi's doing a good job recruiting him and Noah Grubbs. He was just at Florida. His mom went to Florida. His dad went to Florida. His grandfather went to Florida. He really had a great visit to Florida, followed up with another good visit to Miami. He's got visits coming up to Florida State and North Carolina. But Notre Dame right now in a really good position for two of the best quarterbacks in the country, certainly two of the best signal callers in the Sunshine State right now.
Well, let's not leave the Sunshine State then. If we're going to talk 2026 quarterbacks, let's stay at American Heritage High School, where we got Dia Bell, the number 2 ranked quarterback in the class. He is trending towards Ohio State. Do you believe in the RPM, or is it real early with Dia Bell's recruitment?
Well, I think Ohio State and Texas were visits that blew him away this spring, just getting around their head football coaches and seeing what they do offensively to put their quarterbacks in position to be uber successful is something that's very exciting to him. Penn State is another program that you do not want to sleep on with Dia Bell, Coach James Franklin, Coach Danny O'Brien. Those guys have built a great rapport with him. He's been up to Happy Valley a couple times, loves where that program is at and loves the way that they're recruiting him. And then certainly he's made some rounds in the SEC. He's going to be at Tennessee, I believe, this coming weekend, or Alabama. No, he's at Alabama this coming weekend. So we'll see what kind of move they make. Then he's shifting his focus to spring football. The one that's going to be at Tennessee this weekend, Josh, is Faison Brandon, the number 1 quarterback in the country. He's fresh off a visit to LSU. Talking to some people that spent time with him over the weekend, they think LSU might be the early trending program for him. Now it's early, but Brandon told me his LSU visit was great. Got to meet with Brian Kelly, quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator Joe Sloan. He said watching practice was great. He said, I could see myself running their style of offense, and certainly the success Jaden Daniels had this past year winning the Heisman Trophy does not hurt LSU on the trail when they're recruiting quarterbacks. So Faison Brandon, he's been to a lot of places. He was recently at Alabama, recently at Georgia, but LSU getting a chance to impress him. He's got Tennessee next.
All right, so 2026 QB dominoes, do you got a pick on who could maybe be the next to come off the board?
You know, I think you look at those Florida quarterbacks and say, is one of them ready to jump in for Notre Dame? Because it's getting competitive right now. Notre Dame had those 2 guys on campus. They had Troy Hoon on campus from California. Ryder Lyons is the next one that they're going to try and get on campus. So Notre Dame, they've done a lot of the heavy lifting in their 2025 class. They have like 19 commits right now. So they've really shifted focus to 2026. And these quarterbacks have Notre Dame in pole position. And if that's the spot that they want to be at, they may have to beat someone else to the punch and lock it in early. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, we will be watching 2026 quarterbacks because they're dropping. This has been an action-packed Wiltfong Whip Around, the first one that we've taped on a Monday morning. But before I let you go, Steve, are there any new recruiting prediction machine picks that we need to know about that you've put in over the weekend?
Well, one recent RPM I put in, Josh, was for Marcus Garcia, 4-star offensive lineman from Denton Ryan. He is going to announce his college decision later this week, and Texas A&M, coming off a visit 2 weekends ago, is trending heavily for one of their most coveted point-of-attack players. Texas A&M currently has the number 19 ranked recruiting class in the On3 rankings. And I think by the end of the week, there'll be one 4-star offensive lineman better in Marcus Garcia.
All right. Well, Steve, appreciate you dropping by. Well, this is your show. I don't actually appreciate it, but you had a heck of a show today on the Wiltfong Whip Around. A lot to take in. You guys let me know, comment section below, how do you feel about some of Auburn's targets, USC, these 2026 dominoes, David Sanders' visit to Tennessee? A lot to talk about on this Monday morning. Let me know, comment section below. Steve, we'll talk again on Thursday.
Yes, and if people are wondering why we didn't talk about their school, Josh, they needed to watch the Inside Scoop last night, where we hit on a lot of schools like Texas and some of those other programs that had big recruiting weekends.
Georgia as well. Yes, there's a lot to see on this channel. You guys stay tuned. We'll be back on Thursday.